Hamnet is the latest film from Chloe Zhao, personally the first of hers that I have seen, separated from the franchise machine, which seems to have largely consumed her style, with little of what works about it. It tells a fictionalized story of the life of Agnes Hathaway as it intersects with that of William Shakespeare, revolving around the tragedy of the death of their only son, who is the eponymous Hamnet the film is titled after. I refuse to call that a spoiler. It's in the trailers, and it's the point of the story in the first place. As is my style, I'd rather begin with the positives. Hamnet is, to be frank, carried by two of its performances. Firstly, Jacoby Dupe is talented as the titular Hamnet. For such a young performer, he is able to exert forceful emotion, still within the largely subdued characterization of Zhao's stylings, be it the innate twinly love for his sister, or the dreams he has for the future. All the while, the character is never simply a smaller adult, as is the case with children in film from time to time. He has genuine childish innocence which he brings to the narrative, which should have made the tragedy more potent. Issues with the film as a whole aside, Dupe is a highlight. And then there is the crux from which the entire film hinges around. Jessie Buckley as Agnes. If this performance ever felt held back, there'll be no film to really discuss right now. It is a performance with 100% commitment from the actress. Buckley matches the film on its two wavelengths, its more romantic facets in nature, and the grief which is the bedrock of the entire piece. Pain is felt when she mourns Hamnet in the minutiae of her facial expressions, captured in close-up. It is transferred to the audience to the best of her ability. So it disappoints me to say that I, myself, was surprisingly unmoved by Hamnet. Where Buckley and Dupe are putting all of themselves into the characters and the central tragedy, I didn't care for much of how the story was being told. To me, the film comes across as not too sure of itself outside of those two performances. One of my biggest festering nitpicks is the consistency of foreshadowing in the first act. It isn't a spoiler that Hamnet meets his demise early in life. If you know much about Shakespeare outside of simply his plays, that's one of the first things you find out, plus the prevalence of it in marketing materials, but that is a separate issue. Suffice to say, the death of Hamnet is obvious, but the film keeps on hinting at it with comments which stick out like sore thumbs amid the rest of the scenes they're in. It makes it so that, when the boy shuffles off of his mortal coil, it isn't a surprise. It's meant to be some sudden tragedy for the characters, but it just comes by as expected. And, when something of that magnitude occurs perfectly without a hitch, it doesn't really mean anything. In the diegesis, sure, Agnes is shaken up by it, as is Shakespeare, but it's just par for the course for the audience. Another thing is the lack of substantial characterization for Hamnet before his untimely end. To merely estimate, I think the title character is only in the film for a handful of not particularly long scenes. In those scenes, we understand that he's a child and likes to have fun, be a bit mischievous, but not in a malevolent way. So childish stuff. There isn't really anything which separates Hamnet as a character compared to any other child. We don't get to know him as his own person, simply in relation to his parents. That may be the point of the film, but I believe the emotional gut punch would have been more impactful if there was more time spent on the character himself to establish wants and needs without them simply being exposited out loud. Without coming off too negative, I also think that the cinematography is peculiar, in a way. The big emotional moments are given their spotlight with close-ups of actors' faces as they perform, which is par for the course. But what caught my eye was the sheer quantity of static wide shots as characters grieve. I think it's an interesting choice for a film like this, where the internal states of the characters are at the forefront. It emphasizes how insignificant they feel in the grand scheme of the unknowables of the universe, without sounding far too pretentious, but it also has the side effect of pushing the audience away at critical junctions. Then comes my final point, which is the fact that I don't think that Paul Mescal is given much to do when he's on screen. This isn't a matter of his reduced role in the greater scope of the story. It is very much Agnes' story, as it should be, but when Mescal is on screen, he isn't made out to be interesting. He does a little generic angry sad guy slamming his hands on a table in exaggerated fashion, which is jarring compared to the serious tone established. My dislike of Shakespeare as a character may be more of a script/directorial issue, but I think he's not well utilised when he is on screen. It gets a bit caught up in the Shakespeare mythos at the point, just preceding the third act climactic scene, which really irked me in its simplification of the tragedy. Going into Hamnet, knowing its reception as a critical darling and awards magnet, may have subconsciously soured my perceptions of the film. It works best when it explores Agnes through the evidently Terrence Malick-inspired exterior scenes, without necessarily going deep into how the tragedy mars either her or her husband. Hamnet. 3 stars. Well, that's all. Keep on watching movies, and form your own opinions. See you in the next one.